Hey everyone, on this week's Trade to Black podcast, we discuss what the meaning of leverage trading is. A lot of crypto traders that were bullish on the sector 6-8 months ago are now in a situation where they no longer can cover their margins, which in return is creating tons of volatility in the crypto landscape right now. Also, we look at the broad markets, recession conversations, and what's next as we move forward. All this and more in our latest Trade to Black podcast. Hey everyone, welcome to this week's Trade to Black podcast. I'm your host, Shad Dales, and before we get into the details of this week's podcast, as usual, all views on the Trade to Black podcast, the guests on this podcast are purely opinion. You should not treat any opinions expressed by us or guests as investment advice. The views on this podcast are solely intended to be informational and are not investment advice. Let's welcome in first back to the podcast, the Wolf of Weed Street and partner of True Trading Group, Jason Spatafora. Good to see you again. How was the week?
The week's been good, eventful. Glad to be back after a week.
Yes, a week. Also, welcoming back.
It's hard to get me on this thing, and you got me back to back.
Oh,
my views must be good.
Twice a week for the next 8 weeks. Yes, Jason. Also welcoming back. This guy's been busy the last few months, but millennial entrepreneur back to the podcast, Anthony Varrell. Good to see you again. How are things, sir?
How's it going? Good. It's good all around.
It's good.
Try to stay positive.
Yeah, you think? How's the weather in southern Florida this time of year, boys?
It's fucking terrible.
Is it hot and humid?
Dude, I was playing golf yesterday at 2:30 in the afternoon. It was 91, felt like 98.
Oof. Spicy to say the least.
About right.
So where do we begin? Not much has changed as far as market conditions, but there's a couple of things that actually you said a couple weeks ago last time you were on the podcast, Jason, where you're going to start to see some volume pick up within the cannabis space, and we're starting to see that. MSOs had a little bit of a rally this week after down 50% last quarter alone, so they had a couple of green days this week. But you called it a couple of weeks ago when you were last on, and that's exactly what we're seeing. So is this going to be short-lived, you think, or could we see, especially with news that happened this week out of Washington, that this momentum will, slowly build in the right direction over the next few weeks?
Look, I think it's positive, and I was basically just going off of models that I've had for years. And when we've seen volume start to pick up in the OTC, it didn't hurt that you saw, a lot of high growth tech buying, Apple, Amazon, even, some of the EVs like Rivian, Roblox, Roku, Twilio. So you saw tech, make this move, and we like to tie ourselves to tech or high growth. Look, I also think it was part of, the risk reward on cannabis is kind of stupid at this point. Do I think it can continue? I mean, I'm skeptical. I mean, I definitely added to positions, but I added the spread, meaning, if I sold something at 20, I was happy to add it back at, 8 or 9. And that's kind of the approach that I'm taking, but I'd be skeptical to say, bottoms in. I think that there's just too much stuff in the overall market that's a headwind. So, I still think that being cautious is one thing. If you're building a position for the first time, that's entirely different. But I also took some off on those positions, and I also hedged with some puts, and my puts are up right now, like 30%.
Wow. Anthony, I see you smirking over there. What's your take on everything moving forward?
Yeah, I mean, I think it's the same. It's the same narrative. I mean, Jason's right. Like, cannabis is pegged to high growth. I mean, high growth is a good indicator as to what's going to go up, but go back on in the OTC. I mean, cannabis and crypto, it's purely correlated to the high growth stocks. I do think the risk reward, like you said, it's stupid right now. I mean, if you're looking to make a position or you're looking to DCA down, it should be a pretty good time. I mean, we said it was a pretty good time 6 months ago, and now we're here. I mean, I'm sitting on leaps for MSOS for January 2023 that I'm down like 90% on. That'll probably still average in a little bit, and just see what happens. But I mean, yeah, it's. I mean, I'll be honest. Cannabis kind of lost my attention for the most part. I think the regulatory stuff is it's good conversation, but I don't know if there's really any actionable insights that are going to happen in the next couple of weeks to months. So I mean, I'm kind of just not paying attention to the narrative, more paying attention to what Jason's saying. The macro, tech stocks, are volumes coming back? Is capital getting cheaper? Is it going to get more expensive? And really, what does the environment look like? And then I'll make a decision then. But I've been on the sidelines for the past 3 months.
So, Senators Elizabeth Warren, Bernie Sanders, and Cory Booker, and I see a smirk over there on your face, but they wanted to
you just named you just named all of the politicians that talk a lot but don't get a goddamn thing done.
You don't feel
we've
like
been saying their names for the past.
You don't think this has changed at all, knowing that what we're going to see come midterm?
What's changed? You think cannabis is gonna save their asses in the midterms?
Yeah. Jason, what's your take?
Do you?
I don't.
I mean, I fully agree. It's too little, too late, and we also. I think I said this on the podcast last time. Like, I wouldn't be surprised to see something on the anniversary date of when Booker, Schumer blew up the entire cannabis industry by saying they would step in front of safe banking. We know that Schumer's going to put out his CAOA, which is, DOA, sometime in August or maybe before. Like, I wouldn't be shocked if he does it, like maybe the end of this week. But it really is a too little, too late scenario. Look, the Democrats are going to lose the House.
Yeah.
They're probably going to lose this. Most likely, they're going to lose the Senate. Then you're going to have a lame duck presidency. And honestly, you've got the Biden administration, which just told lie after lie when they weren't in power. Oh, we're going to decriminalize. We're going to deschedule. We're going to do all this stuff. And now, the midterms are about to happen. So yeah, let's try and get this core base of constituents to think, we're going to do something, and that's what the Democrats do. Look, at the end of the day, the Republicans, you have to respect their transparency. It's like they either hate cannabis or they like big business, right? Now, most of their constituencies, in these red states have some sort of cannabis law on the books, whether it's medical or recreational. They like the tax dollars. They can see the dollar signs, but they're not into all of this social equity nonsense. And look, the cannabis industry has kind of eaten that up from the Democrats. Oh yeah, all these people are in jail on, like, they make it sound like somebody's in jail for 30 years for smoking a joint, when really the guy's in jail for moving a tractor trailer of weed and was working for the cartels that as soon as they unload the weed, they put kids in it and migrants and all this stuff, and they're human trafficking. So it's like the whole social equity thing, it's chicken before the egg. You can't have like they want it to be equitable. They want people that were harmed by the drug war, people that have felonies too. Now they want to give these people licenses. Well, who's going to give these people money? These people haven't run businesses. So
that's exactly what I was going to say. I mean, as much as I don't want to say this, anybody that I've ever talked to that's an active participant in the social equity program has a rich white guy behind them that's backing them, that's got a majority of the business and that's running the business. The social equity thing is a fucking sham. I mean, that's really it in a nutshell.
Complete sham. Top to bottom sham, right? Because, look, I could own a dispensary, cultivation. Like, I can do it. I can bootstrap it. I'll be out of business in a year. So that's what you're going to see. And I have the knowledge base and the capital to survive, but you don't, like, what are they going to give? 20 million bucks to each of these people?
Right.
And even that 20 million bucks, you're going to fail. And who's going to give a loan of 20 million? Like you would end up creating this this giant stick of dynamite, right? And as soon as you give them the money, you light the fuse. And in all likelihood, and they don't even realize that once they hand them the stick of dynamite, that there's super glue on it.
Yeah.
So they can't even get rid of it. And then that thing blows up. And then you know what happens? The big companies come, they pick up the pieces for pennies on the dollar. And all they did was they transferred 20 million in value and assets to a bigger company for like $1 million.
So
it's such a scam.
Yeah, and a guy like Cory Booker has to know this right now. So how do you see this playing out? Because it doesn't really matter which way you slice it. Eventually, whether it's today or tomorrow, eventually the bigger players are going to enter this space in and, continue to gobble up most of the market share.
What do you mean?
I think he's trying to make the point that like in all trading.
I'm kind of at the point when's everybody going to realize that Cory Booker's full of shit? Like, when's everybody going to realize that Chuck Schumer's not? I mean, look at what you've got going on in this country right now. You've got an energy crisis, you've got inflation, you've got abortion, you've got guns. I mean, you think cannabis is at the top of anybody's minds in Washington?
Supply chain bottleneck.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, we just released 5 million barrels of oil, and if you read certain reports, most of it went to fucking China and overseas. It didn't even go into the U.S. energy supply chain. Like, shit's so fucked up here right now that cannabis is, to me it's important, but to the general public, to Washington,
it's
to
like,
just anybody in general, like, it's maybe the 10th thing down the
it's
totem
like, do you
pole.
want food
like, stuff
security
is so fucked
or
up
do you
here
want
right now that it's
access
not
to
even funny.
cannabis? Right? Like those are your choices. Like you can eat cannabis,
Correct.
but you're just going to get even hungrier. And now you have to pay even more for that bag of Doritos.
Yeah. Correct.
So what are you guys looking at as far as, let's go off script, because like you said, there's a lot more important things to discuss about the state of like cannabis right now. But, we're looking at, definitely heading towards a recession. Do you believe the recession will be short-lived? Do you think this will be long?
We're already in a recession.
Yeah.
I mean, that's the thing. Like, people 8 months ago were like, the stock market's going to crash. Yeah. I'm looking at my screen. It's like Teladoc 80%, Peloton 70%. The Nasdaq is down 8% on the week. I'm like, we're living in a fucking stock market crash right now. Like, we're living in a recession right now. Like, corporate earnings are going to come down. They've been coming down, and maybe they'll find their way out of it. But I mean, the jobs report yesterday that everybody was all ho-hum about on the data, that's a lagging indicator of a recession. I mean, we're living in a recession right now. I mean, do I think it's going to be as bad as everyone thinks it's going to be? No. But I mean, do I think it could get a lot worse? Potentially. But I don't think anybody has any idea really what's going to go on. I mean, we're at the mercy.
So,
of the
Wolfie,
Fed
how do you? And I agree with everything you're saying, Anthony. How do you handle this? Like, what's the best? Like, what are you doing right now to plan for the next 3 to 6 months?
I developed a really good strategy. So I'm short the market, I'm short the macro, and so I mean, look, there's a tremendous amount of volatility in the market right now. So I've been using August 19th SPY puts, right? So I'm leaning bearish because I see all these landmines between now and August 1st, right? I have a little bit of time on top of that to if anything kind of goes sideways, and I've been when I'm selling my puts, I'm buying leaps in low volatility stocks, and my leaps are March 2023, because the market's doing this. So I'm selling up here and then buying the calls here, and then when the market's doing this intraday, then now I'm selling this and then I'm buying back the SPY. So my account's just kind of going like this. Look, I'm trying to build positions with profit where I don't care what happens as long as they're good companies. I'm taking 50% of that profit and buying stocks. I bought a bunch of tech this week. I've been buying, and I've also been using it to buy long-term leaps in a bunch of growth, transportation, stuff like that. But I'm also anticipating that, I think that we're going to have to retest that 363 before anything. And I think that we go below it. As soon as the earnings come in and they're a miss and that E changes on P&E,
Yeah.
that trailing, the trailing PE that we use, it's going to be a nuclear bomb in the markets, right? And the things that I own right now, leap-wise, are cheap enough and far out enough that I'm hoping that it drops, but I'm still managing the positions either way. So, Michael Burry put out a tweet a couple weeks ago. I'm sure you guys caught it, and he was talking about the declines, the last couple of the last 5 declines, like where the market's bottomed.
Yeah.
And each time, the percentage decline is lower than the next one. So it's like the one in 2018 was, let's say 23%. Well, then COVID was an extra 10%. And then so the anticipation is this decline has to be lower than the next one. I mean, he's super bearish, but if you're just kind of judging off of that, then you're talking about SPY like 300, right? So I don't know. I mean, if you look at the put flows, people are making some really big bets under 350 in the middle of August. And I'm reminded of 2018 when the SPY hit 293, which was in September. Somebody bought like $20 million worth of 240 and 230 January puts. Okay. When we were like the day we hit that high, the amount of money that person made, it had to be hundreds of millions of dollars. So we're seeing similar types of flows. Now, look, they also hedge, and you don't know, they could also have a long position, but I think that the market, we're going to get a CPI number. Everybody's going to be like, oh, these are from last month. Inflation's good. So I think if CPI is like under 8.6, so CPI number is the 13th, which I believe is Tuesday. So if CPI numbers under 8.6, people are going to get really excited, right? And I think that we'll probably end up rallying. If it's higher, then they're going to try and make the justification that, this is last month and commodity prices have gone down. But they're not accounting for margin of error and other things that could happen. An oil pipeline gets blown up by some terrorists, some kind of natural disaster that wipes out, let's say, like a refinery, something like that in the United States, and then gas prices go nuts. So, it's kind of touch and go.
Even higher.
What are you guys paying for gas right now in Florida?
What are you putting, regular in your tank?
About $5.
I filled up my Denali the other day, and it was like
I think I paid $5.30 the other day.
High test, and it was it cost me $155 to fill up my tank.
Yeah, my tank's about 100. It's been like $103 every time I fill it up, and it's 18.
So what we're paying
gallons.
What we're paying is equivalent to what you guys gallons, because we're paying $2 a liter. So that's basically $8 a gallon. It's insane. It's crazy.
Yeah, but I mean, people also don't realize this, that the U.S. has been like the lowest globally in energy for a very
And
long
for-
time. Like, we historically have paid
Yeah.
pennies on the dollar for what people are paying for gas internationally. Don't get me wrong, like, this shit sucks. Like, it's terrible. Like, for me, putting $100 of gas in my car every time I use
Are
it,
you guys-
I'm like, fuck. Like, I was putting in $45 worth of gas.
Are you guys
a year and
seeing
half
like a
ago.
big difference just overall in, you know, the cost of living right now from what you're experiencing day to day? Yeah.
Yeah, 100%. You go to Miami right now, and you go out to eat, and you go to Miami. To put it into perspective, every appetizer that was on the menu a year ago that was $12 to $14
Yeah.
is now $18 to $22. Like, just things are so much more expensive. Fish, crab, lobster, high quality beef. I mean, I went to a steakhouse the other night, and every steak on the menu was market price. I've never seen that before in my life. So they're just protecting themselves because the fluctuation in beef is that volatile right now that they can't have a benchmarked price on the
top
menu
of it, they
and
like,
still make
they,
their
they know
vig,
you're coming out
on
to
the
eat,
on the product.
knowing that inflation's high, so they throw on a couple of extra bucks.
Yep.
On top
Oh,
of
yeah,
it,
yeah.
and that's what people don't understand. People think, oh, beef is high. Well,
Yeah.
grain is high, that feeds the cow. Fertilizer is high, that creates the grain, and it goes all the way down the line. You know, and then you're talking about shipping, like shipping the grain. Right now, the fleets that are used to ship and transport a lot of these things from overseas are like shouldn't even be operating, right? So
Yeah.
Correct.
But early
They're operating at a loss.
early signs are showing right now, though. Regardless of the cost, there's a lot of people obviously taking vacation because they've been shut down for 2 years related to this global pandemic. But are you guys seeing like a lot of, I don't know where parts of Florida that you live in, but at the end of the day, is tourism you still think really strong in Florida at this time? Yeah.
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 Yeah, it definitely is. But I mean, I think it just goes back to, I mean, the wealth gap that's happened during COVID that's been so much more exacerbated. Like, not to sound, I guess, pretentious in any way, but I mean, the people that we know aren't hurting right now. No one I know was contemplating cutting back on their July 4th plans because of the cost of food or the cost of gas. The fact of the matter is most people nationwide, probably 90% of the population, were contemplating cutting back on July 4th stuff because of the cost of food, because of the cost of gas. So, I mean, I'm cognizant of it, but I'm not really living in it right now to an extent. But Fort Lauderdale Beach, Miami Beach, Soho House, Wynwood, it's packed. Like, there's tourists. I was about to say terrorists. There's tourists everywhere around South Florida. And everywhere that I've went was busy. New York was packed. When I was up there for NFT.NYC,
I want to touch on that in a bit, but you're going to say something, Jason.
So I have a barbecue every year for 4th of July. So I'm, my favorite holiday by far. And I went, and there's a place in Florida, TNT Fireworks, which I go to every year. And last year, the year before, I mean, slammed. Like, you're waiting online just so they can process you. One, I walked right in. And then when I was in there, I grabbed 2 carts, right? Because I can't push 3. And I'm grabbing all this stuff, and and it made me exceptionally uncomfortable being in there, because I kind of saw it firsthand where people, before would, are coming with full carts. I see parents with their kids, and they're grabbing a lot of small stuff. And honestly, like, I felt like such a douche being in there. I mean, I told one guy, I'm like, oh, I just took the guy's like, oh, where's your house? And I was like, oh, I'm grabbing this for a bunch of friends. Like, we all just threw in, just because.
Yeah. Well, I mean, you're literally blowing up.
Yeah. I mean, and I spent a couple $1,000s on fireworks.
Yeah. I used to go to TNT with my dad every 4th of July and just get carts full of shit.
Even the cost of fireworks was up significantly because they're coming from China and then everything.
From China, yeah.
Well, let's talk about potential sponsorship. Tell me about this TNT Fireworks place.
It's right over. It's right over in Dania Beach, off of Sterling Road. Been there for the past couple of decades. Great selection. If it can be shot into the air and blown up, they got it.
Interesting.
It's a great place. I used to love going there.
We've talked a lot about the traditional financial system. Crypto, no exception, obviously has seen better days. You look at the first 6 months, Bitcoin had a little bit of a rally towards the end of this week, but what can you say right now, Anthony, because you follow this very, very closely, but it just seems like when the traditional system is failing, crypto should actually be improving, but still it's the early days that people are just not obviously understanding. A lot of institutions obviously don't understand the whole landscape yet. But if we're sitting here 3 years from now and look back at these days, is this just this too shall pass and long term this is going to be in great shape? Like, what's your big takeaway as to where we're at right now?
So, yes and no.
Okay.
Crypto at its core, whether it's coins, whether it's NFTs, the whole core thesis around crypto is ownership. I have my Ethereum, I have my Bitcoin, I own it. I have provenance over it. It is mine. It's not like when you go into a bank, you put your money in, they create synthetic derivatives, turn it all around, and then go package it up and sell it to everybody else. So crypto, however, has wanted to go mainstream.
Mm-hmm.
Crypto has wanted institutional money to come in. Last 18 months, institutional money's come in. Mainstream adoption has started to happen. When you look at what's just gone on in the crypto sector, it is because the traditional financial system has basically ingrained the worst parts of it into crypto. So all of these mainstream CEXs, centralized exchanges, not decentralized exchanges, are trading and borrowing out your crypto on leverage.
Yep.
Funds are then getting that crypto, and then they're trading it out on leverage,
Right.
which is what 3AC was doing. I just saw an ad on Twitter before this podcast for buy now, pay later on NFTs. Like, whatever that platform is, I hope it goes out of business.
Right.
Like, bringing in these buy now, pay later, levered products, synthetic derivatives, like, it's the reason why crypto's in the quagmire it's in right now. But that being said, it's also a high risk asset. So when those fund managers and when those portfolio managers come in and buy Ethereum, buy Bitcoin, buy the safer assets in that vertical to put on their balance sheet, there's no emotion. Market goes down, that is gone first. They sell it without thinking, doesn't matter. That's what happened. That's what brought us up to probably 4,500, 4,700 when that institutional capital and the speculators and the buying power and the free money came in. Capital's more expensive right now. Capital's probably going to be more expensive for a while. And Ethereum and Bitcoin, as much as I don't want to admit it, are correlated to the NASDAQ. They're going to be correlated to the NASDAQ probably for a while. Do I think they bifurcate at a certain point in time? Yeah. When? I'm not sure. But I mean, 3AC was like a serious contagion in the system. I mean, a lot of the big boys out there, FTX, Coinbase, Binance, they just became a lot stronger. They're coming in and buying these assets for pennies on the dollar. There's some defaults out there. I mean, Mark Cuban is getting heat because he's an investor, and Voyager is a sponsor of the Dallas Mavericks. So anybody that was affiliated with Voyager that came in on that and that was a customer now thinks that Mark Cuban is a bad guy. It's like, no, you made an educated investing decision to put your money into a platform. You didn't read the fine print. You participated and you got burned. Same thing could happen in the stock market as it happens in crypto. Like CNBC every day is like, crypto's down 60%, crypto's down 70%. Look at the stock market.
Yeah, I know.
Like, talk about the macro in the stock market, or talk about the people that have generated vast amounts of wealth.
So let me ask you real quick.
Crypto.
Like in a case like Voyager that filed Chapter 11, crazy that this was a $30 stock like 15 months ago. But do you see a lot of companies in the space that will begin to merge based on like situations that have happened this week?
I wouldn't say merge. I would say just fire sale consolidation. I mean, there's assets out there, right? I know guys right now that are looking at assets to buy. DeFi protocols, decentralized exchanges, centralized exchanges, and I mean, they're just waiting to pick up the scraps and just roll them in to their platforms right now. I don't think there's going to be a lot more blowups in the space. BlockFi got bailed out. Voyager is now filing for bankruptcy. 3AC's blown up. Celsius is blown up. But Celsius and Voyager are a function of, hey, we were lending to somebody, and we didn't think the music was going to stop, and that lending was on leverage internally that they then leveraged in their fund, and now they told us to pound sand when we come and liquidate and margin call their loans. That the money wasn't there. So I mean, it's really just bad actors in the space. The guys that have built businesses on sound principles, like FTX, like Coinbase, they're alive, they're cashed up, and they're acquiring. I don't think crypto's going anywhere. I think it's if anything, it's found a base. I mean, it hit 840. Ethereum hit, I think, a week and a half ago. It's now back up to 1,200. I don't think it's going to suffer any sort of existential crisis. I do think it's going to get regulated here shortly, which will be good. They need to really take a look at DeFi. They really need to take a look at what's going on and just slap some regulations on it just to put some guardrails so this doesn't happen again. But I mean, this was a stress test. This was a serious stress test and a deterioration of the macro, and these firms failed the stress test. I think it'll be a major key learning, and then they
so
from here.
just so I go ahead, Jason.
Yeah, I have a take. As somebody that is probably the best crypto investor here,
Yeah.
and I'll tell you why. Because I'll buy it, and then I'll get like 10%, and then I'm out, right? And I made the most money buying Litecoin at 45 before it ran up. And then the guy that created Litecoin's like, this is going to come down. I'm like, that's a pretty good signal to sell. But, I also think that, I agree with Anthony, like, all this stuff where all of a sudden it's not decentralized and the worst parts of the market coming in. Well, that's also creates the opportunity, right? Because the crypto bros want to say, oh, this is, a store of value. But calling Bitcoin a store of value is complete nonsense. It's bullshit, right? I've always thought it's bullshit. It's not a store of value. It's not gold. It's not physical. Yeah, it can, go wild. I think you need a couple of things. I think that the Bitcoin whales need to kind of flush out, right? You got too many guys that hold all the Bitcoin. That's why every time there's a Bitcoin conference, Bitcoin takes a shit, and then all of a sudden somebody comes in and then like rebuys it. So they like dump into people, they cause a little panic, and then they buy it. But I also think that, when crypto was really just 10 things, when you're talking about, Bitcoin, Ethereum, Litecoin, what was it like? What was that? Monero,
Zcash, Monero,
it was all that.
All those guys.
You had this consolidation. I think that the thing that really blew crypto up is all the NFTs, all the everybody trying to come out with their own coin, and all that does is dilute the market. And then when you dilute the market and you're taking cash, because people were taking cash out of Ethereum, out of Bitcoin, and they were buying all of this crap, not researching, they were just buying like shiny objects. And then when the shiny objects started to blow up, all of a sudden people start selling more Bitcoin. They're like, oh, I need to buy the dip. This is a good opportunity. And then the dip kept dipping and dipping and dipping. And then all of a sudden it was like a boulder racing down the hill. It's like all of a sudden everybody's Indiana Jones, So I think that you kind of knew that.
Do you agree? I wanted to circle back with based on that. Anthony, do you agree with a lot of what he's saying there? Jason's saying that Bitcoin isn't basically store, what was the term you used again? Sorry, my apologies.
Store of value.
Do you agree with that? Because you kind of nodded your head and said not necessarily agree with that.
I mean, I'm in the middle. I mean, I don't think it's not a store of value. I don't think it is a purely legitimate store of value, but I mean, people do use it as a store of value. If it's an asset, whether it's digital or whether it's physical, and you can argue that if I'm not using a CEX, if I'm using a DEX and I own Bitcoin, take it off chain, put it into a ledger, it's a physical store of value. I've now taken fiat, I bought an asset that I want to shield from the exposure to fiat or volatility, and now I have my Bitcoin. I mean, I do think that Bitcoin is just as useful as gold. I don't think gold is very useful. You can't travel with it. You can't do anything with it. It's a fucking dense metal. I've got a ton of it, but if something happens or shit hits the fan, I can't exactly package up my gold and silver and go anywhere. If I've got my Bitcoin, I put it on a flash drive and I'm gone. I do think that he's correct in the notion of all the garbage that came into the space with ICOs, with NFTs, with DeFi. That being said, I mean, it's analogous to the same thing that happened in the dot-com crash. You had an influx of actors, but out of those influx of actors, 5, 6, 12 of them are going to be the ones that drive innovation forward. You almost need to have that mania in a new budding industry to have those serious actors come in, flush out the bad ones, flush out the speculators, and then the cream rises to the top. NFTs, I mean, you've heard me on this podcast. I mean, I've made a significant amount of money in NFTs. I don't hodl shit. I don't covet any of this stuff. I'm like Jason.
Yeah.
It's black and white. I buy for X, I sell for Y. I mean, it's people that hodl and that think it's going to just keep going and the music's never going to stop. Those are the people that get wrecked. And unfortunately, those are the people that usually can't afford to get wrecked, which is the bad part, because then they exit the market and they don't come back. But as far as this reckoning goes, I'm actually all for it, because it gets the speculators out, it gets the tourists out, and the people that are still around right now that are building NFT projects, that are building DeFi protocols, and that are acting in the ecosystem are the ones that are going to build it and propel it forward to the next step. I mean, this happened in 2017 with ICOs. I mean, ICOs were the same shit as NFTs. It was just a high velocity, just get things to market, see what shit sticks. And out of 100%. But out of those ICOs came Aave, came Maker. There were a bunch of protocols that right now that withstood this last blow up. Maker's still crushing it. Aave's still crushing it. There's a bunch of those guys that came out. Wax. There's a bunch of blockchains that came out of that cycle of ICOs and propelled it forward. And what you're going to see with NFTs right now, a lot of the 99% of it's going to go to zero. But the MLB is adopting NFTs. The NFL is adopting NFTs. Wall Street's adopting NFTs. Gemini's working on a wallet where you can tokenize everything from your house to your car to your assets. Like the underpinning technology from NFTs in the smart contract and the way that it creates provenance and a seamless peer-to-peer transaction instantaneously is going to be propelled forward. The monkey pictures and the fucking flowers and whatever else you want to put on them and give pie in the sky valuations to, that's done. That's done. It's taken shape. The money's been made. Yeah, there ain't no more money to make when it comes to that.
And let me say one last thing about Bitcoin. Also, you know, the people that were the most vocal on it, right? And you can say the same for cannabis, right?
Yeah.
And this was part of what we were discussing last week. But the Pomplianos, the Michael Saylors, and and everybody else that was like, Bitcoin, leverage yourself when it was like 60,000, like sell what you have, like buy on leverage. All those people, that whole audience, they burn their list, right?
Yep.
They completely burn their list. Those people are never coming back. So when people think that, okay, this thing will rise again, it's not going to rise as quickly, right? And now also you have to contend, like, one of the reasons people were buying Bitcoin like they were was because the market was ripping and they felt like they missed out on everything that the market just did.
100%.
But now the market is down and this is something that's easily accessible. Like a lot of people can't wrap their head around buying a Bitcoin for 21,000, but they can wrap their head around spending 21,000 in Apple. And they know, like, you know what, I'm going to get a dividend. This company's going to be around, in a couple years, maybe it's a $4 trillion, $5 trillion market cap, right? And it'll be justified, right? It's a safe, it's still not speculative. So yeah, I mean, it's, there's a lot of, cannabis and Bitcoin are very similar. The one thing I will say about the Bitcoin people, the true Bitcoin people, is, man, they are true believers, right? It's
Oh, they
there's
Yeah,
no
but,
bigger cult
yeah.
than
Yeah.
the crypto bros.
Last thing I want to touch on this topic, and I want you just to educate the audience a little bit, Anthony. Just so I understand, like a lot of crypto traders were leverage trading a short time ago that were very bullish on this market. Fast forward to today, where they cannot cover their own margins. So, can you kind of explain just to our viewers what, like, an example of leverage trading that people were doing within this industry and what it means?
I mean, yeah. So I've got $20,000 worth of Ethereum. I go to party X, I stake it, which means I'm locking it up into a protocol, and they're then going to give me back X amount of interest on it, and then they're also potentially going to give me X amount of principal on it because my collateral is locked up and lever it out. But at some point in time, I'm going to have to pay that back, and you're going to have to pay it back exceeding what the principal is that you just staked into it, and it just becomes a cascading waterfall. Leverage is a very dangerous thing. I mean, I can go on a protocol right now and trade with 100x leverage on an Ethereum contract. Just being a normal person, I shouldn't be able to do that. Like, products like that are dangerous, and the institutions, when they really are using other people's money and there's no guardrails, there's no visibility, there's no oversight. I mean, shit like 3AC happens. They were running $18 billion at one point.
So this is what we're seeing.
And it's all gone.
Yeah. Yeah. So we're seeing a lot of this now. Will we continue to see a lot of this for the foreseeable future?
No. 3AC is getting sued right now, and people are postulating that they basically were running a Madoff-like scheme. The DOJ and SEC is going to go after 3AC. There's going to be some people that go to jail for this 100%. It's not going to be like they're protected like the Wall Street guys in 2008.
Interesting. Last thing I want to touch on, what was it like at NFT.NYC last month?
So it was good and it was bad. There was a lot of high quality people there. There was a lot of people having very intelligent, innovative conversations, but everyone had their heads in the sand. No one wanted to acknowledge that the market is fucked up right now. That the crypto market is down 60-something%. NFTs, the liquidity's dried up. I mean, a lot of people have lost a lot of money. And I mean, no one wanted to acknowledge it. That being said, I mean, I was at parties with Steve Cohen and with guys from Fortress and with guys from other private equity and hedge fund vehicles. I mean, the big boys are interested. They're coming into the space.
If they're ignoring the current conditions, then what was the message that they were saying?
We're here to build. We're here to build. It's time to just build protocols and build platforms. And like the tourists and everybody are all gone. But no one really wanted to be like, well, I mean, even in the blue chip NFT space, I mean, stuff's really not moving right now. And there's really, I don't know if there's too many catalysts on the horizon that really will propel it forward quickly.
Well, this has been interesting. Glad that we kind of went off script. Kind of gives you the state of affairs as to where we're at right now. But I appreciate you guys obviously checking in. Any plans for the weekend in Southern Florida?
I'm about to go do a bunch of yard work.
How about you, Wolfie? Going down to TNT for some more fireworks?
No. I'm getting ready for my vacation.
Where are you heading to?
Italy. So I got
Nice.
I got a house in Florence and Rome and Venice. So I'm going to spend,
Did you see Venice actually just started charging tourists to come in?
Yeah.
To the city? Yeah. Venice is awesome. I mean, I'm assuming you've been before. But
Yeah.
Venice is awesome.
Yeah,
Venice is one of my favorite places
I'm
to
going to go see the Pope, get one of these.
Yeah.
So it's going to be fun.
Yeah, I'm pumped. We're going to France and Portugal in August.
Enjoy, obviously, the trip. Thanks again for checking in, and we'll chat with you guys later this summer, okay?
Awesome. Talk soon.
Good.
Hey, everyone. Thanks for watching. And if you like this video, wait until you see what we have next. Some of the best thought leaders in the verticals that we cover, from cannabis and psychedelics to cryptos and NFTs and sports wagering. So if you want to learn more, make sure to click on that bell for all notifications, and don't forget to subscribe to our channel. Thanks for watching.